Today I'm going to show you how I make a ceramic flask and a funnel to go along with it. I'm going to start out by throwing a hollow cylinder, and I'm using a porcelain clay here. I'm going to remember not to go too wide here because we're going to be smushing this form later and it's going to get wide, so I'm focusing on height. Next, I'm throwing the funnel. So at this point, I'm just throwing all the parts that are going to be a part of this flask. I'm doing the funnel, the spout, the body, and then we're going to assemble later. For this step, I'm going to be throwing the funnel as thin as I possibly can at the top, and in order to get inside, I'm going to use my needle tool as a little throwing stick just to throw the down stem a little bit longer. For easier removal off the wheel, I scrape off any excess slip with a rib and we're good to peel it off of the wheel head. The next is the mouthpiece, and I like to throw multiples of these because sometimes you'll either throw it too thick or too thin, or too tall, so just kind of play around with different shapes. So I just made this flask with little indentations for your fingers to rest, and I think it turned out pretty freaking cool, so I'm gonna show you how I did it. You're gonna want to start with your thrown cylinder, and I just smushed it down like so, and I threw it without the bottom just so it's easier to manipulate. I can take off a little bit of this excess around the bottom. For a flask, you're going to want it to be nice and thin to be the most comfortable. And the way that I'm going to do the indents, I'm actually going to curve it the opposite way this time. I usually see flasks being this shape, so I'm just going to go with like a classic flask shape. And then I'm going to place my hand. I'm gonna go right-handed this time, and where each of my fingers are, I'm gonna set it down. I'm gonna go in and give it a little indent around where each of my fingers are. You can add a little water if you have any cracking on the inside. So I'm just going in, giving it a second one, then I'm gonna go in for the third. I want to flip it for this one. I'm just gonna mark it where I want it to be. Okay, and I think I'm gonna add a little notch on the bottom for my pinky. Yeah, a little bit further in. Looking pretty cool so far. And I'm going to push out this side so it kind of fills my hand a little better. And now you can see inside how it's kind of closer to the inside. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my thumb. So at this point we have 1 for our thumb and 3 for our fingers and a really nice grip. I'm gonna give it one more on this side in case I want to use my left hand too. So kind of like a flask sippy cup. And I think it'll look pretty cool. Yeah, we'll do a little divot here for my finger in case I want to hold it like this rather than like this. And we're ready to now apply the top and the bottom. I'm just going to roll out a slab for both pieces from the top and the bottom. Give it a little flip. Okay. Now that I have my slab, I'm just gonna put this on top. Grab my needle tool and simply trace it. Okay, now we have our bottom. And then I'm gonna flip it over. And we're just gonna trace our top. I'm gonna go ahead and do the bottom first. And what you would just wanna do is score and slip it. So what I do is just grab a little water, score the rim. Same with the bottom. Now I'm just going to match up the little areas where I've scored and slipped the bottom of the piece. I'm gonna wiggle it on, make sure it's really nice and secure since we've altered it. Give it a flip. And then I like to take my serrated rib and then just score it all the way down. Now we have a little funky bottom like this. I'm just gonna leave it like that because we still have to attach the top. Now I'm just gonna score the top, and it's gonna be one solid piece before we go in and attach our little drinking spout. Here's the top. And then we go ahead and attach. All right, now we have our top and bottom attached. We're looking a little bit more flask-like. Here's the cool little hand divots. I'm gonna let this set up and then we're gonna come in and put the little spout on. I threw a separate little cylinder for the spout, and you can kind of play with them in a number of different ways. But I think I'm gonna go with more of a classic vibe here and put it like just off center a little bit. All right, now I'm just gonna take my little knife tool and I'm gonna cut that hole out in the middle here. I could have done this before attaching, but I'm living dangerously. And there we have it. That way I can just put my finger on the inside and then just smooth it out to the bottom here. And then now we take our trusty sponge and smooth her down. That way it'll get rid of all these little imperfections and make it nice and smooth, because I love when a pot is nice and smooth. Now we have two ergonomic, nice and comfortable flasks, complete with these funnels. I'm actually kind of glad that I made one for righty, one for lefty. I'm a lefty, but I live in a right-handed world, so we gotta make do. Y'all, I cannot describe how freaking awesome these things feel in the hands. So thank you for watching, and I hope you try giving one of these a go.